Good morning, and thank you for joining us today for the ISCA ICAN webinar series on resilience. Today we have Dr. Bengu Telknep from Drake University, and she's going to lead us in our discussion. Before I turn it over to Bengu, I just want to do some housekeeping. We're going to keep everyone on mute to reduce background noise. If you have questions, please type them into the question box, and we will answer those questions at the end of the presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and thank Bengu for joining us today and hand it on over.
Okay, well, thank you. Welcome everyone. So today I'm going to talk about resilience and the school counselor's role in fostering resilience. We're going to talk about some research and then some maybe practical things that you can do. So I would like to start our discussions with a Hawaiian folktale story of Bowl of Lights. And I think this captures the essence of what resilience is. So according to this story, each child is born with a perfect bowl of light. And this bowl represents their true identity, a vessel of shining light. So if she's taught to love and respect her light, then she will grow in strength and health, and she can do anything. Swim with the shark, fly with the birds, know and understand all things. If, however, she judges her experience of life as bad and becomes fearful, ashamed, or resentful, she drops a stone into her bowl of light, and it blocks some of the light. The stone and the light cannot hold the same space. If she continues to put stones in the bowl, it will eventually be full of stones. The light will go out, and she will become a stone. A stone doesn't grow, nor does it move. If at any time she tires of being a stone, all she needs to do is turn the bowl upside down, and the stones will fall out, and the light will grow bright once more. So our experiences can be the stones killing our bowl, and school counselors first see the light. Even others, including the students, cannot see it, and help students to see their light and help them to dump the stones. And maybe sometimes as school counselors, we help our students to polish the stones and transform them into crystals. So basically, I believe what we're doing as school counselors is to help students to connect with the true essence of who they are. So the stones in the bowl can reflect their life experiences or their inner thought and judgment about who they are, and also how the students relate to their experiences. And basically, this is what resilience is. Resilience is to teach them and continue to believe that every child has this hidden light within themselves. So basically, resilience has been studied over decades, and so if we summarize, people ask about what people, what makes people find their inner strength, find their courage, and how they bounce back from adverse experiences. So resilience is about growing through our experiences, seeing ourselves and others as surviving, thriving, striving beings, rather than broken, needs fixing, struggling beings. And basically the definition of resilience is it's a good outcome in the face of adversity. And we know that some children face more adversities than others, and the science of resilience helps us understand why some individuals do well in spite of these difficult experiences. So with the help of the movement of positive psychology, strength-based counseling, there's more and more attention on resilience, and we continue to see our students as striving beings, as strong beings who can survive or thrive, rather than people who need to be fixed. So there are various definitions of resilience, of course, and but they always come to a basic understanding or a basic common theme. So, basically, resilience is to adjust successfully in spite of difficult life conditions, or it's a response to stress and adversity, and it's a power or the ability to return back to normal using coping strategies. And it's actually navigating our way and also negotiating the resources. So this is a very important part of resilience research, or what resilience is that it's not the person is active. So resilience is very much correlated or related with the person's active problem solving strategies. So the individual is always looking for social support, seeking for support, and finding resources in their environment. So, and the last definition I want to share is from actually a blog by a professional counselor in Australia, and the blog is Hey Sigmund. And I recommend this blog to every person who works with students or children and adolescents. And she basically gives great advice on how to work with kids. So she defines resilience as it's related to capacity to activate the prefrontal cortex and calm the amygdala. So we know that when we are under stress and when we experience traumatic events, the amygdala is fired and the person has a limited perspective. They cannot use their prefrontal cortex, or they cannot make decisions. So and we will come back to this with as we are discussing the how of resilience. So resilience is actually a dynamic process that involves successful coping and positive adaptation. So if you look at this picture, it's the ability to come back to normal. So it's not falling, but it's the ability to bounce back from negative experiences or from falling. So, and this is important to differentiate what different concepts are, related to resilience are. So if you look at it, resilience is returning to normal functioning when faced with adversity. So on the other hand, so your life is going normal, and then you experience something, or you experience trauma, or maybe chronic stress. Hardiness is not falling and just continuing the way you are. Resilience is that you fall and then you come back to your normal functioning eventually. And thriving, or post-traumatic growth, is actually bouncing back even a higher level than your starting point. So this is very important when we're working with our students, because we need to remind them that just because they fell or they struggled does not mean that they are not resilient. The fact that they can get back up is resilience. So basically, resilience is moving from feeling the felt minus to felt plus. And it's not not falling, but it's coming back, the ability to come back. So it's a great reminder for our students that to remind them the resilience takes place in striving and not in the accomplishing. So as long as they strive, they're resilient. So a very good metaphor or a picture to understand what resilience is actually we can see it as a balance, or we can picture a balance scale or seesaw, and the protective experiences and adaptive skills are on the one side of the scale, and that is counterbalanced by the significant adversity on the other side. So in other words, resilience is counterbalancing of difficult things that happened in child's life with positive things in his or her life and in community. So genes, or what this person brings to life, help where the fulcrum is. So fulcrum may start in one side or the other. So it means some people may have more tendencies to be more resilient than some others. And because the genes actually impact how experiences are going to impact the person. However, our experiences, either positive or negative experiences, can also move this fulcrum, the position of the fulcrum. So when positive experiences accumulate and children learn coping skills, and they can manage stress better, and therefore they can be more resilient. So the fulcrum can also slide. So, and therefore resilience is also about the stories we tell ourselves and the stories that are told about us through these experiences. So, and I like this this quote from that says, "Everyone has a right to have a present and future that are not completely dominated and dictated by the past." So it is important for us to check if we are freezing our students in time or in their experiences, or are we creating single stories about our children or about our students that just because they're struggling or just because they had some negative experiences, are we freezing them in these experiences and giving up hope that they can be different? So through our experiences, we are always constructing ourselves. Our self-concept. We may tell ourselves that we are striving beings, that we are resilient, but we may also learn to tell ourselves that we are failures, So, and I think school counselors have a very important role here to help students to re-author their stories and to check the stories, what is the tone in the story of this child and how we are relating to their stories. So, as a result of these experiences, these negative experiences, we come up, or actually as a result of all of our experiences, we come up with some conclusions. Adlerians call these lifestyle convictions. So basically, we make decisions about who we are, who people are, what other people are like, what life is like, and therefore, so we reach therefore a conclusion. So one way to help students is to understand how they see themselves, others, and life, and they, the way they tell their life story will guide us if their story is resilience-driven or problem-saturated. So helping them understand that they may not be able to change the what or what happened to them, but they can always change the conclusion. They can always change the end, therefore. So, we can ask students to draw or talk about an experience, and we can ask them, as a result of these experiences, what is your conviction? What decisions are you making about yourself and others? And then we can guide them to create more resilience-driven stories. Resilience is also strength-focused. Helping individuals develop resilience or fostering their resilience means that we need to pay attention to their strengths and how they're using their strengths. So, one thing I think we can practice is we can start to see our students as at promise rather than at risk. Because when we see them as at promise, we're focusing on their strengths and the possibilities. But if we're stuck in at risk, we're only focusing on what is wrong in their lives. So, we can think of we can think of a student and just think about, what do you see as the problem? What is the problem? How is this a problem? When does it happen? And when it doesn't happen, because we don't have problems the same intensity 24/7. So there might be some times in this person's life that they are not experiencing this problem, or they are not experiencing the problem as intensely. So, what are these exceptions, and how can I use what is happening with these exceptions to help this person? So with this strength-based approach or strength-focused approach, it is important to understand that it's not, it's not, weaknesses, but strengths, but it's more both and. We are looking both the weaknesses, the problems, and we are also focusing on the strengths of the individual. And, understanding that there are always strengths hidden like treasures within the problems. Sometimes this is because students are overusing some of their strengths, and sometimes it's because they're underusing some of their strengths. So what can we do? How can we help them so that they use their strengths in a useful way? So you know, it's so for example, with the strength-based approach, the trauma-sensitive counseling or trauma-sensitive schools or trauma-informed schools, for example, it's a great movement. It tells us to ask, what is wrong with you, but instead of asking what's wrong with you, we ask, what happened to you. But I think it's also missing an important element. We also need to ask what is right with you, what is working for you, so that we can have these strengths and we can turn them into something something different, or helps the student to be more successful. So when we're working with strengths, one thing that we need to remember that it feels invisible to the person. The person is rarely aware of their strengths, especially children and adolescents, because it comes so natural to us. We are blind to them. We feel like everybody has the same thing. So instead of asking them what they're good at, giving them some measures like values in action inventory, and I provided the link here, and measuring their strengths, and then having a conversation about their strengths and how they're using it can be more effective than, what are your strengths. So another thing that's important is that, and all the research points us to this this phenomena, that resilience is relational, and resilience requires supportive relationships and opportunities for skill building. So the single most common factor for children who end up doing well is having the support of at least one stable and committed relationship with an adult. And this committed relationship can be a parent, can be a school counselor, can be a teacher, can be a coach, or can be someone from the community. But it only takes one person who believes in the child. And I think it is our responsibility as school counselors to strive to be that one person for this child, that when, including the child, everybody gives up hope, that we hold on to hope that things can be different for them. So supportive relationships, adaptive skill building, and positive experiences constitute the foundation of resilience. So for many students, this is what our school and school counselors provide, that it's the relationships, it is social, emotional, academic skill building, and positive experiences. So whenever we think of our school climate, I think these three variables, again, the relationships, skill building, and positive experiences, are the ones we need to check to make sure that we are resilience building schools, or we are resilience driven schools. And you also need to understand or remember that resilience is built over time, and children do not grow in isolation. And counselors, teachers, and adults and other adults in the community play a critical role. So as a result of these interactions in these stable relationships, children learn to regulate their behavior, their emotions, and learn to express themselves. So if you think about it, human beings actually evolved in groups and evolved and survived through their relationships. So, imagine that our ancestors are either hunting or gathering in the savannah, and they walked in groups to protect one another. And they were always with the support of one another. And the danger was always outside. It's either the, saber-toothed tiger or this monster thing. And the group protected the person, and sometimes it healed the trauma of the person. But when you think about it, today in our modern life, the danger is less in the outside and more in the relationships. And it's opposite of how we evolved, especially trauma, especially if you think about, students who experience traumatic experiences or abuse or neglect, that there is a relational or emotional scarcity for these children. So what happens is that it's us, then school counselors, who bring and build that healing relationship. So, again, I love this quote that it says, to love a person is to learn the song that is in their heart and sing it to them when they have forgotten. So resilience is, through these relationships, finding out the strengths of the child and bringing it to their attention. But again, it's very important that for resilience to happen, we only need one person who's committed in the well-being of the child. And resilience is also a dynamic interaction. So it's dynamic interaction between the internal predispositions or traits of the individual and the external experiences. So basically, resilience is not only in the person or not only in the environment, but it's the interaction of the person within the environment. So it's a result of a highly interactive process between the individual and the environment. And resilience, we are not necessarily born with resilience. There's some traits that help building resilience, but resilience is built through these interactions and in the environment. So, some children who do well in the face of hardship typically show some degree of natural resistance to adversity. And but it's important to remember that it's neither the individual nor the environment only determines the resilience. So if you think about, what is in the person, what are the traits of the person, what are these personal traits that help resilience, is that these are the some of the skills and abilities. So the ability to have insight, independence, relationships, initiative, mastery, sense of humor, internal locus of control, optimism, hope, openness to new experiences. These are all the traits that the person brings to this life that helps them to be more resilient. And also, the environment, when we look at the environment, how this environment should be, it should be an environment that fosters coping skills or that teaches active problem solving, active coping skills. Or, for example, instead of punishing when students are struggling, the system, the environment should help them what they can do, or and to feed that internal locus of control. That so instead of condemning a person, we are correcting the behavior and we are guiding them a better way. So, and we can also think of this as we are connecting with a person, with a student who's struggling before we are correcting them. And connecting and correcting happens simultaneously without, we are not focusing on changing or punishing the behavior, but we are focusing on a child who's struggling. An environment that has warm and accepting relationships, an environment that fosters encouragement, growth mindset, in other words, which means that instead of seeing people as fixed because of who they are or because of their experiences, we always believe that they can be different. And we're instilling this perspective to our students, that we're giving them the idea that they can be different, things can be different. And then therefore they're more open for the new possibilities. Safety, or the sense of safety in the environment, that, and we need to remember that it's not our idea of safety, but it's their own perception of how safe they feel in the environment. And also, another important thing is that we need to pay attention to the larger social, cultural, economic context that impacts our students, and the larger political discourse, the larger tension in the society impacts their well-being and how their stress is showing up in schools. And also, therefore, it means that we are not only focusing on the person's resilience, but also the family resilience and the community resilience. So we kind of talked about the strengths, but here what I want to emphasize is that it's not strengths, just like the growth mindset. It's not it is not this fixed traits that you use, but it's all about how you use your strengths. If you know, a strength can become a weakness if you overuse or underuse it. So it's very helpful to help our students to have them see what their strengths are and how they're using it. And is it possible that they're overusing this particular strength or underusing it? For example, for me, one of my strengths from this VIA character inventory is curiosity. You know, I'm naturally curious about things, but you know, there are times that I'm overusing it. I get curious about every little single thing, and it's hard for me to focus. So it is important for me to understand that this is a strength, and it's possible that at this particular time I'm overusing it. And when you look at behavioral problems, sometimes you find that there's an overuse of a strength. And when you look at the weaknesses of a student, it may also be they're underusing a strength they have. So it's all about how we use our strengths and how we are moving in this life. So for the next of the presentation, I want to focus on the how of resilience. So now we know that resilience is this balancing act. It's a dynamic interaction between the person and the environment, and it's very much relational, and it grows over time. So, and then how do you know, what do we do with this, and how do we foster resilience in our schools? So we know that resilience takes one adult, one committed relationship, a consistent, supportive relationship, a person who believes in the child, no matter what. And related to this, Daniel Siegel talks about the attuned communication. So he says, when we attune with others, we allow our own internal state to shift, to come to resonate with the inner world of the other. And basically, this is a definition of individual counseling, right? So it's an attunement of two individuals. This resonance is at the heart of the important sense of feeling felt, meaning empathy, you know, that emerges in close relationships. Children need attunement to feel secure and to develop well. And throughout our lives, we need attunement to feel close and connected. And through these connections, we actually develop resilience. So, and if you're more interested in this area, you know, Siegel's work of, you know, books on whole brain child, mind, side, or yes brain, the newest book are very helpful. And also, you know, providing social support and courage, and instilling courage in our students. We know that resilience takes active presence, you know, and action. It's not, you know, for example, social support is related to resilience, but it's not being a passive recipient of social support, but actually it's the person is actively seeking support, that what fosters resilience. So with courage, we need to teach our students what courage is. Courage is not being afraid. Courage is not falling. Courage is taking action in spite of the fear, and either believing that it will be okay, the outcome will be okay or will be positive, and or even if it's not okay, even if the outcome is not positive, one can cope with it, or you know, one has the self-efficacy. So courage is taking action and having optimism and also self-efficacy beliefs. So, and you know, and some other things that we need to look at, how we can build resilience, is that we need to build executive functioning, or we need to teach students to use the prefrontal cortex of their brain, and you know, and also the integration of their brain. And this happens through routines. The more routines and the more structure there is in the environment, it's easier for students to focus and to feel safe, and to play and to have sense of independence. And we're going to see that the exercise and play have a very important role in developing resilience. So, and unfortunately, sometimes we focus too much on the academic outcomes and forget that children, students, adolescents need time to play, unstructured time to be themselves and to exercise and to use their bodies. And it is important for their brain development. So we need to always bring it to, I don't know if it's still happening, but taking away one's recess cannot be a punishment, should not be a punishment, because you're taking away this important element of resilience when you do that. Mindfulness, teaching mindfulness, paying attention, staying in the present type strategies. So this is very important, especially when somebody has experienced adversity or trauma, and also is under chronic stress. And if you think about our minority students, or especially students in poverty, usually they are under chronic stress because of the environment and the social, cultural context. So when a person is in this state, their amygdala is fired. And if you look at this this shape, and so when you experience these traumatic experiences, or when you're under chronic stress, you're always searching the environment for danger. So, and the closest thing to our brain is the amygdala. So the stimulus comes in and it hits the amygdala, and there's this emotional reaction, and there's this reactivity, there's this stress reaction, fight, flight, freeze. But mindfulness, practicing mindfulness, helps us to take the longer way. So the shortcut is get to the emotional center of the brain and react to the stress. The long way takes us to the prefrontal cortex, the decision making, this executive functioning part of the brain. So, and mindfulness helps us to come to this, to take this long road and not to take the shortcut all the time. So that's why mindfulness is important. And also having a sense of competence and mastery. This is important because everybody has something that they're good at, and we can always use this. And children can develop this sense of mastery and also contribution, that they can teach, they can use these skills, or they can help others with what they know. Having a growth mindset attitude, reminding ourselves and our students that resilience takes time, and they can bounce back, they can get there. And related to this is hope and optimism. So, and I just want to very briefly talk about what hope and optimism is, because they're directly related to building resilience. And one, they impact our relationship with our students, and also it impacts how the person sees themselves or the life. So optimism is basically expectation of a good outcome, but optimism comes with action. And actually it's called pessimistic optimism or realistic optimism. That a healthy optimism is that you expect a positive outcome and you work towards this positive outcome. The optimist expects a positive outcome and may stay there. And of course, just expecting something is not going to change anything. And it can be actually more dangerous than pessimism. The pessimist expects a negative outcome, so doesn't do anything. So it's important to teach children and our students to be optimistic, and not only passively wait for things to happen, but actually set goals and reach those, and work to reach goals, reach those goals. And we know that resilience research shows us that people who are resilient actually have a tendency to set goals and always strive to reach to these goals. So when you're working with individuals, the best way to understand a person's optimism or where they are in their, how optimistic they are, is to understand their explanatory tendencies or explanatory styles. Basically, how people habitually explain the causes of events, especially negative events that happen to them. So some people have this personalization or internalization attitude. If bad things are happening, it's probably my fault. Maybe I did something wrong. So it's this internal versus external explanation that, you know, or it can be, you know, other people are just lucky that, you know, I'm not lucky. So is there a lot of internalization going on in their explanations of their story, or in the way they tell their story? And the other one is how permanent they see the negative experiences. Is it stable or unstable? In other words, these negative things, these negative feelings, these experiences I have, are they the weather or are they the climate? Do I see life as everything is horrible and nothing can be different? Or is it like things come and go, you know, positive experiences can come and go, and negative experiences can come. This is a transition. Things can get better. And also how pervasive they see. Is this about everything, or is this specific? For example, if I fail a test, is it because I'm just basically globally not so smart person? Or is it just I didn't study well for this test? Or maybe I'm not very good at this subject doesn't come to me naturally. So helping students to see how they explain things, and helping them to develop more optimistic explanations, that not everything is personal. Some things are in our control, but not, you know, things do not happen to us because of the fault we have, or things are not permanent. You know, they're in transition all the time. They come and go, and things can be different. There are different possibilities. And also, things are not global. Our negative experiences cannot be generalized to everything we experience in life. So we can help our students to develop this more optimistic explanation, so that they can actually work towards their goals. And very much related to this is the hope, the theory of hope. Basically, hope means that you set a goal and you believe that you can achieve your goals. So basically, it's finding pathways, and then to reach your desired goals, and also having a motivation to stay in this pathway, or having the courage or motivation to find a new pathway when you get stuck. So teaching hope and optimism are very, very, very important. And the other thing that I want to say is that teaching students active coping strategies, problem-solving strategies is important, and also checking your attitude as a professional school counselor. That, you know, how are you making sense of things? Do you have an optimistic attitude? How do you explain things? Are you pessimistic, or are you, you know, do you see things as pervasive or transition? You know, check your own attitude. And, you know, this is especially with our parenting, you know, how we're relating to our kids. For example, one thing that I ask people is that if you want to teach growth mindset, you need to first check your attitude. And how are you with your own mistakes? Can you show your mistakes, and can you make mistakes? And when you make mistakes in front of other students, how do you explain it? Do you condemn yourself, or do you explain, oh, I made a mistake, and do you just move on? Because your students and your own children actually are observing you, and they're learning more from the way you interact with them and the world, more than the things that you tell them. So it's always important for us as counselors to remember that, to check our attitude and our mindset first. So also teaching social skills, self-advocacy, and by the way, I wanted to say something about mindfulness, that because when individuals experience stress, because the amygdala is fired, sometimes for some of our vulnerable students, it might be difficult for them to practice, you know, focus on your breath, close your eyes type of things, because they want to be in control of their environment. You know, if this is the case, we can teach them just to pay attention to their bodily sensations, or you know, how they're reacting, how their body is reacting. Do they feel tense on the shoulders or on their throat? You know, when they're stressed, where in their body they're feeling this. And this, you know, paying attention to their bodily sensations will help us, then will become the bridge to help us to teach them the basic emotional regulation skills, or to foster their emotional intelligence. Sometimes it is hard for them to start from the emotion, and because it's so threatening. So it's we can do the bodily or body scan type of mindfulness in those cases. So help them to set goals, and having a vision or mission in life, or creating a meaning in life, is helpful for them to reach their goals. Teaching them accepting responsibility in terms of, in other words, having an internal locus of control, that believing that there's some things within their control, and taking risks. Teaching them to have the courage to be imperfect, or having this encouraging growth mindset, and also teaching them the emotion and emotional intelligence. So again, sometimes it is hard for them to get there, but they can start with their body and how their body reacts before they can talk about how they're feeling. So this is a very good, and this is all available freely online. If you, this is a very nice model developed by Grothberg, and in this model, she talks about resilience in terms of the things I have, I am, and I can. So I have are the factors that are outside of the person, what they have in their communities, in their families, in their school. And I am is their inner strengths, inner feelings, and their resources, beliefs. And I can are the tools that students can use to successfully cope with adversities in life. So this can be a nice activity that you can do. You can talk about the stressors in the student's life, and then give them this guide, like, I have, what is it that you have that are out in your environment, in the school, in your family, in your community, and make a list of these things. And then I am, have them make a list of their strengths, their feelings, their resources, their beliefs, their goals, and then make a list of the things that they can, what they can do to successfully cope with this stressful experience. And I think we can also add, it's not part of this original framework, but we can also add I do, and which can be learning to take small actions. Sometimes when we develop goals, the goals are so big, it feels unattainable, or it feels so out there. But we can also break this goal into tiny little elements, and then explore what is one simple tiny little thing I can do today, I am committed doing today, that can help me move in the positive direction. So getting, however small, taking a tiny action and moving towards that action. So I believe this can be a nice strategy, nice a small group work, or maybe in classroom work or an individual work that you can do with students to identify all these areas of sources of resilience, so that they don't get stuck with this idea that they themselves are not resilient beings or resilient beings, because we know that it's developed through time and through our interactions. So when you look at this, the resilience wheel, this is another framework that can help us understand or develop our programs. So with resilience, when we are developing resilience-based programs, we are doing two things. One, we are mitigating the risk factors in the environment, and also we are building resilience in the environment. So, for example, we can do things to increase the pro-social bonding or sense of belonging in the school. Having set clear, consistent boundaries, or having a routine, and that helps students, and teaching them life skills or teaching them coping skills, and teaching them the life is difficult, life is messy, and it is difficult, and we all use coping skills, and we all fall and we all come back, and it is possible to come back. And to build resiliency, we provide caring and support. And I want to point this because we know that it only takes one person in the community who believes in the child. So schools can actually be that places for students that they're cared and they're supported. So the relationship is at the core of resilience. And setting and communicating high expectations helps building resilience, setting those goals and believing that they can achieve and supporting them in achieving their goals. And also opportunities for meaningful participation. In other words, they count. They have a place at the table. One thing I think we need to watch, especially, for example, if you're doing circle of friends or peer support or peer counseling type of activities, usually what we do is that we put the student in need in the middle, and the other students, the other peers are helping the student. This is a great tool. We know that it's evidence-based, it works, but I think we also need to make sure that this child who's in the middle, who's receiving this help from peers, can also knows that or develops this idea that they can also help their peers. So for example, let's say you do this emotion regulation activity with this child, and and the peers are supporting the child. It isn't, let's say we are exploring when you feel emotional or when you feel out of control, when you feel like cries or tears are coming, how do you want your friends to help you? After this exploration, and after setting that how the peers can help this child, it is also important to help the child. What can you do when your friend is feels sad, or so that the child knows that they have the power, they have the capacity to contribute to the well-being of others, and they are not always in this receiving end of the support, but they have the courage, and they can, and providing them opportunities to count is important. So, and very much related to this is the Bettner and Lew's model of crucial C's, and checking in our environments, what these crucial C's are. So basically, these are, Lew and Bettner says that children basically need to feel connected, capable, and count. So in other words, they need to belong, to feel secure, and to feel connected to their environments. And they need to feel competent, and they can take responsibility. Therefore, they feel capable, and they feel, they need to feel significant, and that they can make a difference. They can contribute to the well-being of their peers or others in their environment. They count, and also they feel that they're able to handle difficult situations. In other words, they have the courage to deal with difficulties. And as a result of these experiences, these crucial C's, they actually develop resilience. So, so when you're working with a student who's struggling, you can check, how do they feel connected? Is connection missing in this person's life? How are they feeling capable? If they're always failing, what can I do so that they feel like they can do, or they develop this sense of mastery or sense of accomplishment? And also checking, do they count? Do they have opportunities to contribute to others? Can I give them some leadership roles or some tasks that they can help? They feel like they count. Or how can I help them to use their strengths in a useful way, so that they are an important part of this community, this school community? And also, do they have some courage, or have they given up? Sometimes students have assumed disability. They feel like they are not capable of doing things, or they are not. They feel like they can't handle difficult situations, or they always need help from others. So check if they have courage. And then once the idea is that once they have these crucial C's, they're more likely to have resilience or to develop resilience perspectives. So in summary, the school counselor is basically a resilience builder, because school counselors are those people who are the main the main connection to students, who are the ones who are providing these social emotional skills, these academic skills to children. And also I see school counselors as people who are like archaeologists or treasure hunters for the strengths of students, and therefore, you know, resilience is very much inherent in what we do. And in closing, I want to remind us that, and also remind our students that life is not about how fast you run or how high you climb, but it's all about how well you bounce. So resilience is about how well you can, how fast and how high you can bounce, and it's the belief that we can always bounce back from adversities. So this is all I want to say, and I wanted to have enough time if there are any questions, so we can open it up for questions, I guess.
Okay, so thank you. If you do have questions, go ahead and type them into the question box now, and we'll take a few minutes to answer anything that comes in. Are there any resources for high school students?
Any resources for high school students? Yes, definitely. The majority of my experiences are in elementary school, so I have a tendency to go back to those examples. But definitely, everything I said here are also, you know, about high school students and how we can help them. And I can actually share. I have a resource. No, I didn't. I took that off. But I will, you know, as part of this, the slides, I will have a resources page, and then, you know, people can just download or go for those all the resources I shared here actually can be applied, can be used with high school students, but I will definitely provide more resources specifically for that can be used in secondary level.
Okay, next comment, question. There are trainings for us in the high school to help kids. Many are using drugs and alcohol to deal with their lives.
Mm-hmm. This is actually, it always comes in with, you know, as we are talking about trauma-sensitive schools, etc. What you're fighting against in these situations is the emotion regulation capacity of these drugs. So, you know, yes, it is a challenge, and it's a battle that is very hard to win, because no matter what resources you provide, they're not going to be as numb or as, you know, as it's not, drugs do not bring regulation, but they're not going to feel that sense of safety or calmness or numbness with whatever we present to our students. So it's a battle, but it is possible, you know, through these relationships and through accepting that life is difficult, but there are always different possibilities, and keeping that optimism and hope and guiding students, I think we can help them. But I agree that it's a big battle. But it always comes back to the relationship, the strength of the relationship.
How do I persuade teachers to have this mindset when they are mentally done with the student and they are seeing them as a burden and only look at the negatives?
Yes, that's another battle, and that's why I say school counselors are resilience builders. You know, I think one thing that we can do is to check the teachers' burnout. Teachers are human beings too, and when that happens, yes, it means they burned out. They're at the end of their capacity, their cup is empty. So I will start there and remind them that they can. One thing they can do is that to remember why they decided to be a teacher, what brought them to this profession, to going back to that beginner's mind, or that excitement, that passion that made them start this profession. They could be anything else, but they chose to be a teacher. Why was that? And finding that why and going back to that core might help them. And also constantly reminding them, these students are not having these behaviors to punish their teachers or to annoy their teachers. They're struggling, and this is the only way they know how to count, how to feel alive, and how to feel safe. So instead of seeing these problems as problems, we can stop and look behind this problem. There's a person who's struggling and who's screaming for help, and bringing that compassion to our work again. And I know it's easy for me to say, and it's very difficult to do, because they have, at the end of the day, they have to teach the geography, or arithmetic, or algebra. And yeah, I mean, it's hard, but it's always reminding ourselves that this is a person, there is a human being who's suffering in front of me, and there are things I can do, and always going back and checking our why and how empty our cup is. So school counselors should be resilient in this sense, and to keep just reminding that this is a person who's struggling. The student is not doing it to punish you or to annoy you. Yeah. Other questions?
Just waiting to see if anything else pops in. That was the last question that was submitted. Okay, well, thank you so much, Bengu, for sharing all this really great information. I know I learned a lot, and thank everyone for joining us today. We will have the recording and the PowerPoint available by early next week on the ISCA and the ICAN websites. And just a reminder, the last webinar in our series for this academic year is on May 7th. It's Creating Safe Schools for the LGBTQ+ Youth. So if you haven't registered for that one and you are interested in that topic, jump over to the ISCA website and be sure to register for that last upcoming webinar for this year. Again, thank you everyone for joining us today, and have a great weekend.
Oh, thank you everyone. Continue to be amazing.